We have reached the appointed moment, and so we're going to close the doors and we're going to get this session underway. Thank you all very much for coming. My name's Bill Mantel, and I'm the director of the Commercialization branch, and I guess we're kind of responsible for bringing you all here today to focus on something that I think is very critical to moving forward a number of agendas. And it all got its genesis several years ago. But before I do that, I think I need to warn you that the session here is being webcast. So everything you say and do today is being, and tomorrow, is getting put out there in the ether, the digital ether. So, you know, take that into consideration before you cuss me out or Brad or something like that.
So you have a right to remain silent.
There's going to be a record of that conversation somewhere, or somebody's going to overhear it. As I said, this all got started a couple of years ago, where we called together 7 or 8 people in a room, and we had this notion that we needed some tools about pulling a bunch of networks together. And we had Dom and some of the others from the University of Waterloo here. That process kind of fizzled. I think largely because at that point we weren't ready and didn't have enough clear thoughts in our head about how to move it forward. And however, since that time, a lot of things have happened, and we actually have a lot of wonderful traction getting started across the province. That is really about what we're talking about today, which is communities of practice. Which, and you know, some of our esteemed speakers today might take issue with my nomenclature here, but I don't know. Is it about networks? Is it about linking networks? We were sort of grappling with that a couple of years ago, and since that time, I think we've got a lot of clarity in terms of how we need to at least build the people architecture across the province to help accelerate this thing we call commercialization. So since that time, we've been developing these things called regional innovation networks, and that is really about local networks and trying to pull together a bunch of key actors region by region, because that's where things happen, and geography does matter. Although it is today distorted by the fact that information is freely available and we can communicate digitally across thousands of miles and around the world very quickly. But as I said, I think we were a little early and not quite ready. Since that time, the RINs have developed. We've been focusing our resources around tech transfer through the research commercialization program, and there's a lot of great collaborations getting built there. This building has opened and has become very much a symbol as well as an important place for collaborations and networks to come together. And certainly the whole innovation agenda has gathered a lot of traction, and that means we really need to be, I think, very clear and purposeful in how we're trying to organize various communities to get things done. And in my mind, what are we trying to get done? We're trying to I think we're searching for a new paradigm, or we're searching for a new global best practice around bringing together a bunch of communities around accelerating new companies and or existing companies, and applying a lot of new knowledge that's getting generated daily right across the province at our world-class research institutions. As I said, we have a lot of very mature networks across the province: regional innovation networks, capital networks, technology networks, entrepreneur networks. And these are all kind of revolving around, and I think what we're trying to do is, if you imagine the concentric circles of all of those key ingredients around accelerating growth for companies and therefore the economy, we're trying to find that sweet spot in the middle, and recognizing that it's more than data. It is about people. It is about how we can connect the right people more often and in a much more effective way locally, across the province, across the continent, across the world. If I'm hoping for one thing to come out of today, is there a tool, or is there a set of tools that can actually bring all of those communities together connect us within the province, within the country, and to the key places and people across the world that we need to link to be a thriving jurisdiction. So, some of the key questions that are in my mind, as I just said, what are the tools that can support, in many ways, the bringing together of a number of communities of practice? What are the ingredients for success? And how do we mesh that against place and geography? Because all of that counts. But as I said, it's a different world today than it was 20 years ago, and I think many of us are still trying to grapple with that and how it impacts the coming together of people and various communities of practice. So as I said, we're searching for a new paradigm. I hope we get there. We may not get there because this is a fairly challenging and complex set of activities. If we don't, it may be the starting point of getting there somewhere down the road. But I think we will. I hope we will have at least had a good day and a half together to help better understand some of these concepts, so we can more purposefully implement them over time.
Thank you. As usual in battles and meetings, you have a plan and it always falls apart within a few minutes as you learn various things and do various things. So I'll try to be very brief. But I'd like to give you some thoughts about why we're here today and some of the different objectives that we may have. This meeting came about because a number of us at another meeting were concerned that people were moving forward with the potential of procuring and developing information systems to support commercialization within Ontario. And they did not, in our minds, this was Don Cowan and I were at the meeting, have really an understanding of what the problem was. And one of the characteristics of technocrats, and we put ourselves in that same unfortunate puddle, is that we are very, very good and very rapidly look for solutions. But we're not very good at conceptualizing and looking at the problem in a comprehensive way. The real academic and the real thinker, regardless of whether you're academic or thinker in industry, would be one who first understood the problem. And if we understand the problem, there's some hope, not only that we can get individual solutions to parts of the problem, but that the whole can be eventually resolved or dealt with in a systematic way that is a robust way that works. And you have probably seen countless systems in your different environments where people solve this part of it. I've watched things like accounting systems where someone gets the accounts receivable area working like a perfect bee, if you want. It's going perfectly. And the rest of the system is so bad that, in fact, the overall change in the performance of the environment is zero. So we need to look at an entire problem. We need to really understand it. This is work we're doing at the Institute, become very interested in the issue of supporting different kinds of communities. One is communities of physicians in practice. Another is communities of researchers. I know someone's here from the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research. Communities of caregivers. These are people in the home who take care of dad and mom and or friends and need somehow to be united with other caregivers across the country and be able to share information. All of you have heard about knowledge management, big area in computer science, an area of great importance. But what we've come to the conclusion is that these systems to support different people and groups of people are absolutely dependent on our ability to bring together those people in some sort of reasonable way, support them in the way they need to be supported, and provide the knowledge resources that they need, but the ones that they specifically need. And what you need and I need may be very different. So in thinking about the area of commercialization, and Bill really dealt with this quite nicely, I mean, there are entrepreneurs, there are lawyers, there are investors, there are researchers. There are all kinds of different communities that are attempting to get together into some holistic kind of framework and work together. We've learned in our work and research in building systems that you cannot get people working in one environment to provide the information that's valuable to people in another environment. Now, they're willing to work for themselves. They're willing to work for their compatriots in that area, but providing information to other communities, if you want, is really not in their scope of what they want to do. So anytime we create systems, somehow we have to recognize that there is this set of different communities, all of whom want to be or can be supported, potentially with technologies or other ways of supporting them. But they need, in order to be successful, they need to be themselves supported. They're not going to support other people. So we began thinking about this, and we had read about the communities of practice and done some work in it before. We also looked at, and although we focused around communities of practice here and conceptualized commercialization as the inner networking of communities of practice, we looked at things like social network theory, which is another area we'll be addressing today. And as we talked about this, it became clear that these ideas might be of value to you. So the purpose, the fundamental purpose of this meeting today is to introduce all of us to these concepts first. So we have a framework around which we can think about commercialization. Think about what might work in bringing people together, what might work in systems to support commercialization. The different people who have contributed to this along the way is a very great mixture. Computer scientists, there's people from the accountancy school, there are people from social groups within the city of Waterloo and other places. The idea here is to present to you frameworks. And then what we're looking to you to do after hearing these frameworks and learning a bit about them is to ask the question, how might I apply, how might we apply these frameworks to make a difference in realizing an effective interaction among communities in commercialization. And what we're looking towards by the end of the 2 days is maybe getting some early ideas of how these ideas can make a difference in the way we proceed from here. So really what this is about at the beginning is understanding the problem, understanding what we're dealing with. And then we'll move on to how can we, if we learn about some of the tools that are available here, thinking tools particularly, how will we be able to use those as early as possible in what we're doing. I want to point out that among the speakers today, Etienne Wenger is speaking. Has a book, if you haven't seen it yet, on cultivating communities of practice. This has been very influential and since it came out in about 1993 or 4, didn't it?
No, 2002.
2002 is this new one. It's been out for a while, I know that much. One of the ideas of this meeting, by the way, this is an incarnation facilitated by Bill Mantel and Roger Pan of something called the Waterloo Health Informatics Think Tank. So we create sessions like this. This is an example of it. This particular session, focused around commercialization, is the first one we've done in this area. We've done many others. So the idea here is to pull people together who are experts, people who are in the field, and get them to talk to each other, share their ideas, share their thoughts, and so on. So at the beginning, to just kick this off, I'd ask you to listen to the different presentations, absorb what you can, take notes, think about things, because we're going to turn, particularly at the end of the day and tomorrow, this back to you and say, what do you get out of this? What have you derived from what you've heard? Is there something here that might be of value in the way we're proceeding? And we'll ask some specific questions. And we welcome, of course, at any time your questions. So that's about the, by the way, the other thing is one of the things that unfortunately came late to the meeting, Alex Haddad is here with Dowena, and we're going to insert an opportunity for them to make at least a few comments in the afternoon, and then tomorrow to give a demonstration of some technology, hopefully around lunchtime. That's what we're planning on. So that's an insert into the program that was a late insert. I hope you'll tolerate that kind of variation. With that, I'm through. So maybe I'll turn it over now. We'll start listening to the